Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm a little bit flustered this morning. I'm going to call Gloria. So our check-in question for today, welcome everyone. Our check-in question for today is, what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for?
Hello?
Good morning, Gloria. How are you?
Pretty well. I had a rough time sleeping because I took a pill.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
It kept me awake all night about.
Oh. Well, hey, we are we are live, so you can say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
So, Gloria, our check-in question for today is, what are you grateful for?
Jesus.
Oh, that's a great thing to be grateful for. She said Jesus. Well, we're glad you can join us, even though you don't have you can't access the YouTube, but you're going to be here with us today. So I'm going to put you down here so you can still hear me, and I can have my hands back. All right. So what are you grateful for, everybody? We've got Aaron saying Arise online studies. I've never done Arise, but I've heard good things. Seems like a pretty cool thing. God and family, absolutely. Happy, healthy baby. Yes, that is a wonderful thing to be grateful for. We are all grateful for that season. Oh, there are cameras at the Grizzly Discovery Center in West Yellowstone. That's cool. It sounds like there are some grizzly bears that you can watch. So that's fun. Health and technology. Yeah. I'm very happy to not be sick right now and to be able to still communicate in some way with everybody. Yeah. Family and memories. Absolutely. So many online worship options. Yes, there are a lot of online worship options that more now than there were before, but there are a lot of really good ones. Budding trees, yeah, it's been really nice to be able to go outside. Yesterday, I just sat out in our front yard for like an hour, and it was great.
Yeah, that's a great blessing.
So I don't have a contest question for today because it was a crazy week, and I think we got one video out this week. It was Monday when I talked with Aaron, and that was it because it was the final week of the semester for me, and I had a final paper due, and it's due tomorrow, but I thought it was due on Thursday night. So I finished it Thursday night, and then I had a presentation yesterday on Friday, and then I found out that, oh, it's not due till Sunday, but I already turned it in. So I'm done, and I'm gonna let the semester rest, and that is a good thing. However, I was working on my papers and my presentation all week, and so I didn't quite get get to any videos, unfortunately. And and Courtney was like, "Hey, we can record the kids video," and it was on Thursday, and I was like, "No, my paper's due tonight. Like, if I don't work on it today, then I'm not gonna get it in time." It turns out I could have gotten it in on time, but that's okay. And so we didn't have a ton of videos this week, but we'll get back on track with that. Country living, yeah, that's nice. Getting to just walk outside and not see neighbors. So no contest question tonight. My week was a little bit crazy, but I'm done with the semester, rolling into summer, and it feels It feels great to be here. I wanted to remind you, if you would like to give tithes and offerings, you can do that through the website, wahpetonchurch.com, and you can Adventist giving is also the link that it'll take you to, and you can continue to give if you would like. And one more thing on the videos, I actually did get a video yesterday. Aaron made a video yesterday, and I didn't get to uploading it until much later, and then it took forever to upload. So it ended up like finally getting onto the page at like 11 p.m. last night. So you can check out yesterday's video today or tomorrow, whenever you would like to do that. It's just Aaron kind of talking about the passage in Luke, so you can check that out. That will be on the channel as well. So yesterday's video is up, and it was just a little bit late. So I think that is all of the announcements that I have, and today we're going to be continuing in Leviticus. And it was another little bit of a tough section until I made some realizations with the help of other people who are a little bit smarter than me, and it ended up being a really beautiful passage. So we're going to be in Leviticus 21 and 22 today. There's some laws about priests and things like that. So for those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Welcome to our, I think this is our ninth week now, doing church this way. And we are in Leviticus. And so if you have a Bible, I would encourage you to pull that out, because it's going to be tough to follow without that. And if you haven't watched the Bible Project video on holiness, then you can actually do that now. You can just pause the live stream, go watch it. It's about 6 minutes long, and then come back, and then you'll be able to catch up later. So if you haven't done that, then you can do that. You don't have to. It's not necessary to understand what we're talking about, but it is a really nice setup for what holiness is, and how this passage speaks to us through this word holiness. So Leviticus 21 and 22, these are laws for priests. And when I first read it, I immediately thought, I think I'm going to skip this section. I'm going to skip chapters 21, 22, go straight to 23, where we can talk about the feast. That'll be a lot more fun. And so I read this passage, and I was like, "Ooh, I don't think I want to preach on this. This is some tough stuff." And if you've read Leviticus 21 and 22, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of stuff in here that says, "Wow, I don't know if this is something that I want to do a whole sermon on." And I kept reading. I kept reading other people's thoughts on this passage, other commentaries and things like that. And I realized something that is so profound and so beautiful that I did not recognize when I first read it. So we're going to jump in Leviticus 21 and 22. I'm going to read sections, and then kind of skips and summarize sections, and we'll get through the whole of both chapters, and then we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. So Leviticus 21 begins, "And the Lord said to Moses, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them," all right, so this is God now speaking through Moses specifically to the priests. All right, so this is not the whole congregation. This is specifically to the priests. "And say to them, no one shall make himself unclean for the dead among his people, except for his closest relatives, his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, his brother, or his virgin sister who is near to him because she had no husband, for he may make himself unclean. He shall not make himself unclean as a husband among his people, and so profane himself. They shall not make bald patches on their heads, nor shave off the edges of their beards, nor make any cuts on their body. They shall be holy to their God, and not profane the name of their God. For they offer the Lord's offerings, the bread of their God. Therefore, they shall be holy. All right, so the priests have to be holy. Verse 7. They shall not marry a prostitute or a woman who has been defiled. Neither shall they marry a woman divorced from her husband, for the priest is holy to his God. You shall sanctify him, for he offers the bread of your God. He shall be holy to you, for I, the Lord, who sanctify you, am holy. All right, so very first section we see here are a lot of rules. Some of them are really big, like, hey, you can't marry these certain people. Some of them are trivial seeming. Don't shave the edges of your beard. Don't put a bald patch on your head. And all of this is in service of the priests have to be holy because God is holy. And then it ends with, I, the Lord, for I, the Lord who sanctify you, am holy. Now, the next section, verses 10 through 24, it talks about, hey, don't when your hair with your hair, don't just wear it loose down. You got to tie it up. It talks about don't touch dead bodies, and then it repeats this phrase, I am the Lord. When you're taking a wife, make sure that your wife is a virgin, that she hasn't been with anyone else, so that your offspring can also be pure and holy. And then it says, it repeats this phrase, I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Verse 16 in chapter 21, verse 16 through 24, it says that the priests, it talks about the different physical blemishes that the priests can't have. So it says, hey, if you're handicapped in some way, if your body is morphed in some way, then you can't serve as the high priest. It says that you can eat of the offerings that people bring for the priests, but you can't enter into the holy place and the most holy place. So you can still you will still be fed, you'll still be taken care of, but you can't perform these duties. These priests have to be holy, and the same things that are forbidden for priests to have, it mirrors the animals, the unblemished animals in chapter 5 of Leviticus, where it says, hey, this is the restrictions on the type of animal that is to be sacrificed. It has to be pure without blemish. And it's the same thing with the priest. So it's mirroring these things. And then again, it repeats this line at the end of verse 23, for I am the Lord who sanctifies them. Chapter 22, verses 1, the first section here, verse 1 through 9, it's talking about, hey, don't eat the offerings that people bring for gods, like the sin offering. When people bring their sin offering, don't eat that. That's not for you. That is a different type of offering. Only eat the offerings that are meant to be for the priests, right? So there was a whole list of offerings that people would bring. They would take part of it, burn it on the altar, and then the rest would be for the priest, for the priest and his family as their food. And only eat those offerings. That's what this section is about. And it actually talks about, hey, don't share it either. Like, other people aren't supposed to eat this stuff. People who aren't priests, they don't get to eat the holy. It says the holy things. They don't get to eat the holy things. Those are the things for the priests. And so don't eat those. Don't share them with other people. Now I want to finish this section here, verse 13. It says that, or verse 12, it says, if a priest's daughter marries a layman, she shall not eat of the contribution of the holy things. So if there's a priest who has a daughter and she gets married to someone who's not a priest, then she no longer gets to eat of the holy things. She no longer gets to eat of the sacrifices that are offered for the priests. But, verse 13, but if a priest's daughter is widowed or divorced and has no child and returns to her father's house as in her youth, She may eat of her father's food, yet no layperson shall eat of it. So if something happens where she's not married anymore, then she can come back and she can still eat the holy things. Verse 14. And if anyone eats of a holy thing unintentionally, right? So if I'm eating and we're sharing food, and then all of a sudden I eat some of the meat that is meant to be for the priest, then it was an accident. But there's a way that I can make up for that. He shall add the fifth of its value to it and give the holy thing to the priest. So basically, you just have to re-gift what you've taken. 15. They shall not profane the holy things of the people of Israel, which they contribute to the Lord. All right. So these are the people are bringing the gifts to the Lord, and they are holy things. And so now that they are holy, laymen can't just eat this. Lay people can't just eat this. This is only for the priest and the priest's family. So verse 15, they shall not profane the holy things of the people of Israel, which they contribute to the Lord, and so cause them to bear iniquity and guilt by eating their holy things. For I am the Lord who sanctifies them. This repeating phrase again. And then verse 17 through 25 is talking about how the offerings are supposed to work, the different types of animals, who can actually bring an animal. If an outsider brings an animal, then that animal's not pure without blemish, so that can't be sacrificed. And then so that's verses 17 through 30. All right, and then this is the verse 31 through 33 is the last section of this whole passage. All right, so 20 Leviticus 22:31 says, so you shall keep my commandments and do them. I am the Lord, and you shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified among the people of Israel. I am the Lord who sanctifies you, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord. So we just went in like 6 minutes. We went through a whole bunch of stuff. All right. And I was intentionally going really fast. So there are a lot of rules here for the priest to follow. There's a lot of rules for the priest to follow. God clearly wants us as the people of God. God wants us to be holy. God wants us to be holy. All right. And so this word holy in Hebrew is the word kadosh. All right. And this is a transliteration of that word, kadosh. All right. So the word kadosh is holy. That's what God wants for the people. God wants the people to be kadosh. All right. And the word kadosh, it means it's translated as holy, but what it really means, what holiness means is set apart, utterly unique, right? That's what the word means. It means to be set apart, to be utterly unique, right? And a lot of times people misunderstand what unique actually means. They think it means rare. Right? Unique doesn't mean rare. Unique means one of a kind, that there's only one. All right. So kadosh means set apart and utterly unique, because that is what God is. God is utterly unique. And so anything that is not from God, anything that is not from God profanes the space that God created. Right? So anything that's not from God, any behavior that doesn't come from this kadosh, it makes it not set apart. It makes it not unique. It makes it not kadosh, because it didn't come from the God. And this matters because anything that's not kadosh, that's not of God, doesn't have God's lifeblood flowing through it, and therefore is from the realm of death. And God does not want death in the world. God wants life. And so this kadosh, the reason why this holiness code is so important is because if we don't follow the holiness code, if we don't be holy, as God is holy, then we are bringing death into this space of life that God has created. And so God demands kadosh. God demands kadosh because God wants life to thrive in the world that was created. But man, it seems like there's a lot of stuff in here. It seems like there's a lot of stuff just in this one section where someone can just slip up accidentally, and all of a sudden they're defiling kadosh. They're profaning the whole sanctuary, and by the sanctuary, the whole cosmos is profane because I slipped up because there's just a lot here. And so God wants kadosh, and this kadosh has to be perfect, because if it's not perfect, then it means that it's tainted and it's profaning the whole thing. And if you watched the video, then you saw this, how the sin, when you touch it, then it infects the thing that it touches. So if I touch, this is why it says when you touch a dead animal, you become unclean, because the uncleanness of that death transfers onto me because I touched it. And so the kadosh has to be perfect. But how can anybody measure up to this perfection, this kadosh that God demands of the people? And this is where we find the gospel in the Old Testament. All right, because we could just fast forward to Jesus and say, this is how it works. But we actually don't even have to fast forward to Jesus, because right here in this text, we see the gospel of God, the grace of God given to the people. God demands kadosh. 6 times in this section that we read today, 6 times God says the phrase, I am the Lord who sanctifies you. 6 times he says this phrase, I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Now, this word sanctifies you is miskadoshkem. Okay? Miskadoshkem. So remember, God demands kadosh, holiness, set apart, utterly unique. And then God says, I sanctify you. I mishkadoshkem you. What it is I holy you. So this word sanctify is I make you holy. I make you kadosh. Kadosh is what I demand of you, because that is the way that life flows into all of the created order. And I am the one who gives it to you. God demands kadosh. God demands holiness. And it says in this one section, 6 different times, God says, I am the one who does it. I am the one who gives you the holiness. You are not holy because you follow this code, because you do everything that you're supposed to do. You are holy because God has declared you holy. The theme of Leviticus, which comes up over and over again, is you don't have to do anything. Your holiness comes from me. Trust me when I tell you that I have made you holy. So, of course, nobody can measure up. Of course, nobody can follow this holiness code perfectly. But it doesn't matter, because we are not made holy by our actions. We are made holy by the actions of the God who is holy, who gives us the holiness. And if you watched the video that I put out, I would encourage you to go watch it if you haven't watched it. It talks about how Jesus, when he walked around and he touched people who were unclean, who did not have kadosh, his kadosh transferred onto them. And this is the same thing throughout the Bible. God is always about imparting holiness, imparting this set apartness, this uniqueness, so that life can thrive in the world. We do not have to behave a certain way in order to be holy. We are holy because God has given us holiness. So yes, God demands kadosh, and God has already given it to you. We only need to trust that God has actually done what God says is done. That when Jesus says it is finished, it actually is finished. You are holy. All right, when this verse says you shall be holy as your God is holy, it was in the present tense. You are holy. You will be holy because I have made you holy. So God demands kadosh, and God miskadoshkems you. Do we have any thoughts or questions before we finish today? All right. Enjoy your Sabbath day. I hope that you have a chance to get outside. Oh, Aaron's got a question. So how do we live out the miskadoshkem? I think that if we have this is always the follow-up question of like, well, what do I do next, right? And I think that that's the wrong framework to operate out of, because what inevitably ends up happening if we are wondering, okay, what do I do now? Is we start making a checklist, right? And then we make sure that, okay, I need to do all these things to make sure that I am maintaining kadosh. And that just means that you have not accepted that God has already given it to you. So how we live this out is we get to a point of believing and trusting that it actually is true, that God has given us holiness. And that can be that. I mean, that's the hardest thing that I have struggled with. You all know this. This is what I've struggled with for the last several years, of my belief that I'm not enough. And so what we need to do then is, what are things that can happen that can reinforce my trust and my belief in this truth that God has given me holiness. And so, like we've talked about in the videos, doing daily rituals that can remind you of your identity in God, that can remind you that you have been given holiness, that you are good, that you are not bad, that you are a child of God, that God is pleased with you. Doing daily things that can just settle into your mind and your heart, that say, hey, this is who you are. You don't have to do anything. There's nothing left for you to do. Just trust me. You are good. You are holy. You are righteous. And so living out this thing is more about, hey, do you actually believe it? And so I don't want to tell you, hey, this is what you need to do, because then it just becomes a checklist. But find ways that can reinforce your identity and your belief in yourself. Is there a way to fall out of favor of holiness? Is there? Great question, Susan. Is there a way that I can not have the holiness of God? There, in throughout the Bible, there's a constant reference to the book of life. And what we see in the Bible is that never are any names added to the book of life. There's never a name added to the book of life. Every single name is already in the book of life. The only action that we see in relation to the book of life is names are blotted out of the book of life. And in Revelation, there's this incredible scene where John is looking at the book of life, and there's the book, And then there are the books. And the books are documenting all of the deeds of humanity. And what we essentially see from this scene is that, hey, your name is in the book of life. If you want to just trust that, then welcome home. You can come to the promised land. You can come to the New Jerusalem. You can live with God forever if you want to just trust that your name is already in the book of life. However, if you really want to be judged by your own actions, then you can be judged by the books, right? And so it's a matter of, hey, what do you want? Do you want to just trust that your name is already in the book of life? Or do you want to be judged by your actions, which are the books? All right, I would much rather just believe that my name is already in the book of life than be judged by my own actions. So how can we fall out of favor with this holiness? The only way that we can fall out of favor with this holiness is when we try to attain our own holiness, is when we try to attain the holiness that God demands by our own means. Then we don't measure up. We don't make it, right? We don't get that holiness. But when we stop and we say, okay, I can't do this, I have to trust that God is going to give me this holiness, is when we will constantly be in this state of the holiness of God. And when we can bring life to the world around us because of the life that is flowing through us. Excellent questions. Excellent questions. All right. So as I was saying, I hope you get a chance to get outside today, breathe some fresh air, to enjoy the rest on the Sabbath day, and I hope that you will find a way to trust that God has made you holy. That God is the one who gives you holiness. You do not have to work to earn your holiness. God gives it to you, and the promise of that is in this obscure 2 chapters in the book of Leviticus, where God continuously 6 different times says, I am the one who gives you this holiness. So may God bless you and keep you. May the face of Jesus shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the fullness of the Spirit dwell within you and give you peace. Happy Sabbath, everyone.